Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second day here of the Computational Antitrust Conference. So as Thibaut said, we will begin with this practical session on how to start with computational antitrust. Today we will have three great speakers that I will have the honor to moderate this panel with. So first we have Yann Guthmann. He is the head of the Digital Economy Unit at the Autorité de la Concurrence, the French competition authority. He is a graduate of École Polytechnique with a specialization in economy. We also have Thibaut Schrepel. He is an associate professor of law at VU Amsterdam and a faculty affiliate at Stanford University Codex Center, where he is the project creator and director of the Computational Antitrust Project. And finally, but not least, we have our third speaker, Alex Sotropa. He is the Executive Operations Chair of the Computational Antitrust Project. He's a PhD candidate in competition and consumer law at VU Amsterdam University and a legal counsel focused on competition law. Well, we will start here with Yann. Yann, please, you have 10 minutes to talk to us about your work at the French Competition Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Fayane. Just let me share my slides. Should be working. So yeah, I'm excited to be present here to present a project we've been working on at the French Competition Authority for the last year and a half. And we did a little bit of preview at the last Computational Antitrust last year. I also can show you the tweet from Thibaut from last year that was mind blown at what we spoiled. Joke aside, it was easier to find the tweet using Google than using Twitter on its own network. And so it was a project that started with one simple idea. Opinion and decision in the antitrust fields refers each other. And so by detecting and compiling all the quotes, you can unveil a graph of the different publication. One publication quoting the other publication. And so we did the implementation on all opinion, decision, and interim measures from the French Competition Authority from 2009 to 2021. So it's about 22 years worth of documents. It's amount to 635 documents for more than 24,000 pages. So it's very challenging to identify all the codes by hand, but with a computer program, it can be done quite easily. And so we did this. We created this tool to identify the references, and also we created a visualization tool to show the network that is available online on the website at the address you can see. And so without further ado, I can show you how the network looks. Ta-da! So that's all the publication, as I said, from the authority, and all the publications that are quoted by our stating database. So all in all, we have more than 1,000 nodes. So our 600 from start, and the others that we have identified in the references. And we have more than 4,300 edges. That's the quotation. And so one edge can represent one or more citation, because sometimes a document can refer to another one several times in its own. And so we identify more than 8,000 citations. So, and you can see almost all here on this capture. And so you can browse this network. You can see what are the relations between the different publications. And you can also download the data. So if you want all the quotation by a decision, it's available online. Just need to identify where your specific publication is on the network. but with the filters, it can be done quite easily. Regarding the arrangement of a network, we use a special algorithm that is called Guthmann and Reingold to draw it, but it's very easy to explain. Each node acts like a magnet, and each magnet repel each other, and the edge, you see, you cannot repel if you have an edge, and so after that, we try to minimize the tension on the graph. And usually, publications that are close can be related even if it don't quote each other. And so I can show you one example on how it looks on a specific publication. So there's a bit of a typo. It's opinion 18A03 and not 13. Sorry that. And so it's a famous opinion on ad tech from the French Competition Authority. So you can see it at the center. That's our main publication. And in yellow, you can see all the publications that are quoted in our document. So it's all the publication, but what is very interesting is that afterwards, you can see all further publications that quote later on this opinion. And so it's all the purple dot, and it's all, I check it, it's all the publication that later on deals with ad tech, you know, like Google News Corp or Google Related Rights. And so it can be really very useful because it's a new way to do research on antitrust publication. You start from a seed. You see, I think this publication, this decision is very famous, and I want to see all the further publications that relate to this seed publication. And now, with this kind of tool, it's very easy to do. And on the bottom left, you can see the download data button if you want to get all the data on an Excel file. We also add global findings. We found that the number of citations increased over the years, but it can be linked to the increase in the number of pages. So if we do the ratio, it remains quite stable. 2009 is the most quoted years. You can see on the graph on the right, but time factor is important because, for example, for publication from 2021, there's not much room for other publication to quote them. So, and it can be very hard to take into account this time factor. That's one point to keep in mind. And what also very interesting, it's more than 2/3 of the FCA publication are quoted later on. So in our opinion, we think it's a very high number. And what also can be very interesting, that you can cross the result we obtain with other databases to gather more insight. For example, we cross it with some metadata we collected on our websites, and we found that more than 80% of publications that involve penalties were quoted, whereas only 2/3 of publications that did not were. So you can see that publications that involve penalties are quoted more often than the other. So that's one interesting result. And you can also do specific analysis by sector. So there's an example on the slide. We wanted to see what are important publications. And so we have one definition of important. They are important for case handler because they quote it later on. But one should keep in mind that other sources of quotation are put aside. And so a decision could be important, but not quoted later on. And so we miss that, for example. And also we have a time factor. Recent decisions are not found by this method. Nonetheless, it can also lead to very interesting results. We conducted a human analysis on the 10 most quoted publications. So they range from 2005 to 2011, so they're quite old, but each one was last quoted in 2020 or 2021, so they're still relevant. And we did an analysis of each paragraph to see which paragraph of which decision are quoted. And here you can see an example for the decision 7D41. So it's regarding practices opposing the freedom to set price for services offered to healthcare clinics. And so you see that the major reason for setting this publication is the condition under which a professional body is subject to competition rules. And so at the end, so that is just a preview, all our work is released on an open source basis, and an article should be soon published. And I think it's an area that can be very fruitful for further research, but maybe we'll talk more in this panel about it later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yann. Now we move to Thibaut talking about his work related to guide antitrust agencies in creating a decision trees based antitrust compliance API intended for market players.
Yes, thanks very much. I'll be quick. I want to discuss Yann's work, and we received already quite a few questions. The videos will be available if possible, but in any case, Yann's work, or what he just presented, will be published within the Computational Antitrust project. So no worries, you get access to all of that. What I want to just show you, and this is just a draft, so I thought, let me take the opportunity to see how you will react to this. If you have questions or comments, send it our way. The paper is not yet published. It will be also published within the project. What I wanted to show you here is the making of an API and take it from ground zero. The idea being to see if we could design a computational antitrust solution that will be effective while being very cheap to come up with, because it does not require much of your time, no computer science expertise. And I am quite pleased by the result, but I'm curious to hear how you will react to it. So what do I mean by an antitrust API? This is just a demo of it. So what I've done is that I've transposed EU competition law into decision trees. And here what you see is what end users will see, right? So I'll put the link in the chat, but you could see that you navigate questions, you answer yes or no, and you get to a first result. It's not perfect, and I explain all of that in the paper, but it's actually quite good, and sometimes the answer is very obvious. It infringes antitrust or it does not. Some other times it's a gray area. So if you play with the API, everything is open source, you will see that you will reach very interesting situations. So how to create that? First, what you have to do is to transpose here EU competition law, but you could do the same for the US or any other country, competition law into decision trees. You see here an overview of the one for rebates and discounts. Again, all of that is accessible in the article, so I won't go through all the details. Then you end up with many different decision trees, here one per practice. But the trick is that, of course, you want just one decision tree in the end. So it will trigger very interesting question as to how do I help someone without antitrust expertise to first navigate the tree so that the person will get to assess a practice that is relevant to her or his business, right? So what I've done here is that I've, of course, started for Article 102 with the dominance test. But if there is indeed dominance, then you want to guide people toward certain practices. And so this is how it looks like when you transpose all of those decision trees into just one tree. Again, you will ask the question, are you answering in assessing your strategies when they are related to pricing? If yes, then you could direct people towards predatory pricing, margin quiz. If not, then you direct them towards other practices such as tying and so on and so forth. Once you have all that, all you need to do is to deploy. I've here used a tool called Berkeley Bridge. Again, you find the reference in the paper. You could play with it yourself, deploy on their server, but if you have your own website, if you're an agency or a company, you can deploy that just on your own. And again, what you deploy is what I showed you just here, knowing that I've done it just for Article 102 of the TFEU, but you could do it also for Article 101. I think merger control is a good target. Of course, you could do it for pretty much every jurisdiction. Just one point very quickly, and I'll stop there. If you design such an API, you will find that the technical issues will often amount to substantial issues. What I mean by that is that I realize that very often you lack information to navigate the API. I like the information as an antitrust expert, but even more so if you are not. And you will see that if you are to navigate the tree, sometimes you are indeed in a situation where you have to answer yes or no to a question, but you cannot possibly have the information as a company. And even worse, you shouldn't have the information because they could amount to a collusion, right? So it actually shows you where we may need to reform antitrust. The second pitfall or limit of such an API is that to navigate the API, you need the expertise. You may be familiar with the concept of a as efficient competitor if you are embedded in the field. You may know what we mean by many customers over the long term. I quote here the Court of Justice of the European Union. But if you are not an antitrust expert, you have no idea what many mean, right? So it may also show you where you need to reform and use more precise wording. But in any case, there will always be limits, and I will stop there. You can't probe the future, but that is often what we ask companies to do to assess the compliance of their practices with competition law. You have to answer, for instance, in the case of refusal to supply intangible assets, whether or not the practice will limit the production of your competitors and their technical development, which you can't possibly know because it's about the future. So it's very interesting because, again, designing the API leads to substantial questions. I'll leave my email address over here. If you have questions or comments, send them my way. For the rest, please focus the questions on Alex and Yann's presentation.
Thank you, Thibault. Now, Alex will present his network analysis study on the decisions of the European Commission on abuse of dominant position. Please, Alex, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Just 1 second to share my screen because I have some slides also. Okay, thank you for having me. I'll briefly present my research. As Yann, I'm also using network analysis in order to understand the structure, but the focus of my research was a bit different in the sense that I focused on the decisions of the European Commission on abuse of dominant position. So today we're going to discuss a bit on how I created the database, how I deployed the network analysis, and some of the early results that I already have. Before that, I think it's very important to understand why network analysis. For this, I have a very simple answer. Network analysis gives you the opportunity to have an objective view or an objective angle on how decisions or how documents relate to one another. The easiest way to do it in case of decisions is, as Yann already mentioned, using citations. Which gives you the possibility to understand patterns, to understand the evolution of the whole network, and gives you the opportunity to deploy various algorithms in order to measure the importance of a decision in the overall structure. So what I did in my research is that I extracted the citations used by the European Commission in the decision in which it sanctioned companies for abuse of dominance. Basically, I extracted citations from the source decisions, which were the abuse of dominance decisions, to other decisions of the European Court of Justice or decisions of the European Commission. At that time, I built the network by manually extracting basically the citation from one source to another. How does the network will look like? Basically, we have several nodes which are formed from the citations used in the overall network. Some of them are the source decisions, some of them are the target decisions, and we have the connection between them. Sometimes the connection is weaker because we have only one citation, for instance, but sometimes the connection between two nodes is very strong because there are like a lot of citations from one decision to another. And this is also important because it shows the importance of another decision when the European Commission basically argued in favor of a sanctioning decision. The network I built, it's a bit smaller. It has around 400 nodes, around 1,000 edges. It is a directed network because it basically one node will always link to another node. Also, what I've noticed is that most of the citations are concentrated in the top decision, which is called basically the power law distribution. And another important observation I made is that citations are generally used by the European Commission to substantiate or to support its arguments when issuing a decision. This is how my network looks. This is the raw version of the network. For the visualization, I used Gephi, which is a free version, a free visualization tool available for everyone online. You can use it to pinpoint various aspects of the network. For instance, in this case, I use Gephi in order to show which decision is most or which decisions are most cited in the network, and you can see actually the links between the decisions, and if they have a higher number of citations, then the node will be larger. Also, I have some general results. So we see that the most cited decision in this network is Hoffmann-La Roche, followed by Michelin and United Brands, which shows that these three decisions are very important for the overall structure. Also, another important element is that you need to look also on how many citations a particular decision has, because this shows how well grounded is that decision in the overall network. And we see that Google Search, Slovak Telecom, and Google Android have a very high number of citations used. Of course, importance is the most accessible or the most common element measured in when deploying network analysis. And as I previously mentioned, this is one of the reasons people in general use network analysis for research purposes. I deploy several algorithms in order to measure the importance of decisions in the network. I came up with a labeling system, and what I've noticed from my research is that Hoffmann-La Roche, United Brands, and Michelin have the strongest importance in the overall network, and are closely followed by several other groups of decisions, like AXO in Irish Sugar, but also with a moderate importance, another group of decisions. Also, and when I built the network, I extracted citations also depending on their section in which they were used in the decision. For instance, if they were cited in the section analyzing the existence of a dominant position or the existence of an abuse. This is something I didn't tackle in my presentation, but you will be able to check it in the article I will soon publish. Also, you can see there the evolution in time of the citation, and the fact that by using network analysis, you can also explore communities, because when two decisions, for instance, have a very strong connection between them, they start creating their own community, which is somehow distinguished from the other nodes in the network. if you have any questions, I'm very happy to discuss my research or the overall use of network analysis.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now I think we have a few minutes to ask some questions, so I'll start. To Yann and Alex, one interesting question that I have is, where would you like other researchers to expand your studies? Yann, perhaps is it merger control, and Alex, is it Article 101 or another jurisdiction?
Maybe I start. Thank you. Terrific presentation from also Alex and Thibault. Yeah, merger control publication can be very useful because with this kind of network analysis, one idea we have is maybe we could identify easily or not which decision creates new relevant market. That's one thing we have in mind, and we try to search in this direction in the following year. But there's much to do with this kind of network. Like I said, we will publish, and all the data is already available on the open source basis. And I think you can dig a lot into our data because we found some correlation, but we didn't explain why it's this way. And so there's a lot of work of explanation to be done. I think that can be very fruitful. Maybe Alex want to add on this.
Yes, I think it would be very useful actually to connect this kind of networks with other networks built on maybe merger cases or one-on-one cases, or of course the connections between other jurisdictions. One way of using network analysis is actually to overlap different networks and to study the relationship between them, because for instance, for competition law, that would be important because we have this idea of applying 101 in 1 and 2 across jurisdiction in a very coherent manner. And this is one, for instance, one possible avenue for further research to check if this kind of idea is actually can be proven actually by using network analysis.
Thank you both. Perhaps one last question to Yann. What was the biggest challenge when creating this network?
Lot of challenge. I think the biggest was to visualize the network, because it can be a mess, and so you need to make order of this mess, and so it's kind of difficult, but hopefully there's some fancy algorithm already available online, so like the one I mentioned and like the one Alex mentioned, but it can be very daunting. And you see the final disposition, it looks cool, but you cannot explain why this decision is close to this one. And that could be also a further research of area. One thing, one of my data scientists who worked with me on this project noticed just a few days ago that all construction publication relate to each other and are all located on the bottom right on our graph. But it's the only kind of sector that act like that. For other kind of sector, we don't have this clean distribution. So understanding why some decisions are close together is very daunting. But I think it can be very useful at the end if someone is able to crack this nut.
Thank you very much, Yann, Thibault, and Alex. And also the participants that join us now. We'll move to our next session in a few moments. Thank you.